Welcome back to GTD. We have a huge week, especially with NASCAR this week, with a first for many of us, the Iowa race, and some F1 previews to get into with the very fun race coming up. And then 24 hours Le Mans happened. We'll do a quick recap of that. U.S. Open had a wild finish, and we'll finish off with Major League Baseball, topic we always touch on the show. But let's start with the Iowa race. First race on NBC this year, which is big. First race in Iowa, which is huge. I mean, a lot of firsts for NASCAR. We had a first-time winner this season, a big-time winner too. So what'd you think, Micah?
I really enjoyed this race. I know there were a lot of people who were worried there might not be a lot of passing coming into this race, but Brad Keselowski actually put out a tweet before this race said, hot take, it's going to be easy to pass and Iowa's going to have good racing. And his hot take was absolutely true. The racing at Iowa was great. The repave worked really well. I was greatly encouraged by that. It was great to see actual multiple groove racing and some comers, some goers, guys going back and forth a lot of the time. I just found it very entertaining, and I think this track is like what NASCAR thinks Richmond is.
Yeah, you even heard on NBC a lot of comparisons to Richmond, especially with Rusty Wallace designing the track or whatnot. I will say my one kind of minute complaint, not complaint with the track, but a way to make it better is, and I think this just happened over time with the way tracks work, but this race would have been that much better with less grip. I know they had brand new asphalt, so it was super grippy, but if you take just 10% of that grip away, I think it puts in the driver's hands more. You see more tire fall off, not like Bristol, but more than what we had. And I think it just makes it that much more interesting and more slip-ups from guys, if you will. But a little less grip makes this track perfect.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think, as you say, with a repave, naturally you're going to have some things like this happen, and usually you'll kind of get that little slippage introduced on its own, and it'll be less the tires just flipping a switch and exploding and more actual tire fall off and less grip. So I think that will definitely happen on its own. And another thing I was really excited about this week was NASCAR on NBC being back. And man, I have missed the triple box showing multiple battles at once, actual competent camera shots that aren't of the front corner of a race car. It was great.
Yeah, I've never been one in the past to complain about this coverage, but literally something would happen, like in a battle for 34th and 35th. The guys would have contact, and before the announcers could say it, there'd be a camera shot of that contact. It's like they had a camera on every single car and knew what was going to happen before it happened. With Fox, we would have waited 4 laps to get a replay of some small contact, and they showed it live. They didn't have to do a replay because they were just on it. And it was really refreshing just to get that kind of speedy, up-to-date response from things that happen in the back of the field that usually no one cares about. And I mean, even without Dale Jr., it's great to have NBC back.
Yeah, and also a thing from last week at Sonoma where the Kyle Busch and Ross Chastain contact, it was like pulling teeth to even get an in-car replay of that. And then, lo and behold, NBC opens their intro segment, and all of a sudden it's a great view of this Kyle Busch and Ross Chastain thing. I'm like, I thought we didn't have this. Where was this? But
Right.
it was really great to see overall. And let's finally get into actually who won this race. Your pick, Ryan Blaney. So
I got one.
congratulations for that. You're back on the board. Ryan Blaney winning
Yes.
his home race in Iowa, and he was, I don't want to say the fastest car all day because I think Kyle Larson was the fastest car for a lot of this race, but Blaney definitely took advantage once Larson was kind of out of the running and did his job, kind of a makeup from Gateway where a crew mishap and the fuel cost him a win. He was able to capitalize this time, so credit to Ryan Blaney and that entire team.
I agree. I do think Larson may have had the better car, but it's obviously we can't say anything about what would have happened if Suarez hadn't have not turned into Larson. Anyways, Blaney won stage one, and some strategy played into that and some pit stops. But I mean, you think about it, Blaney had stage one. He led a lot in stage two. I mean, there's a chance that the winner of this race, if Larson stays in the race, comes down to strategy. And I'm kind of leaning towards Blaney had the better strategy, whereas Larson had the better car. And the way the third stage played out, we had a long green flag run. There's a good chance that Blaney stays ahead and wins this thing anyways.
Yeah, that car was just bad fast, and you saw him, especially in lap traffic towards the end with William Byron and Chase Elliott trying to close in. It seemed like Blaney's car could just work whichever lane it wanted to, whereas Byron and Elliott, if they got stuck on the bottom, they didn't really have to drive off to be able to keep up. So I think Blaney's car also might have been a bit more versatile, even if Larson's had the outright pace. But Ryan Blaney, I know, is not a guy we typically see a burnout from, so I was kind of apprehensive for burnout ratings, especially once he started doing his slow little drive back down the front
Yeah.
stretch. But then he got going eventually. It's still just it's gonna be a solid 6 for me. I think it could have been better. It was a slightly above average burnout in my opinion.
Yeah, and mine too. And I think that, I mean, you even texted me. You're like, "Oh, we're not going to have a burnout today because it's Ryan Blaney or whatever." And like 10 seconds later, he just breaks one out and does one. I think the second or third time he's ever done a burnout. Which I gave some points just for Blaney doing a burnout, but it was a good burnout in my eyes. It was a bounce between a 7 and an 8, but we have seen some good ones this year. So I would bring it down to a 7, but could be an 8 just because it was a Blaney burnout, which is always fun. And I was getting flashbacks from the Martinsville race with the Hendrick guys, the 40th anniversary Hendrick team, because I mean every 3 laps, especially towards the end, there's 80 plus members
Did you
from
know he
Ryan
had
Blaney's
family
family. Yeah, all of the t-shirts and everything. But it is great for them to see that, and a really cool environment. It seems like that's happened this year. Every time there's been an anniversary or an ordeal or an event or something going on, that driver really pulls through and wins. So what do we got next? Who's the next guy?
Well, I think right now it could be Kyle Busch's birthday and his kid's birthday and his parents' anniversary, and he'd still get wrecked and finish 35th. The guy just cannot buy a break right now, and we saw it again this week. A car that had top 10 speed and then just got loose up kind of in that cushion area, smacked it off the wall, and just was done. The toe link broke, and then he said a brake line or something broke in that car when they tried to fix the toe link, and just this car's had speed. Like I don't know what they can do right now because Gateway they were a top 5 car. Sonoma you'd run top 5 all day. Today top 10 all day, and just things completely out of his control, which has to be frustrating if you're Kyle Busch. And I know they're with Martin Truex retiring. A lot of people are saying maybe he goes back to JGR. So I don't know. I think the Richard Childress experiment has really not worked, and just it seems like it's one thing after another, even when the car is fast right now.
Well, I do know, I think he said earlier today that his plan is to stay at RCR at least for the next season. Now, the season after that, we don't know. I mean, obviously retirement isn't the question here with how old Kyle Busch is. But especially if he doesn't get a win this year, next year, he's not going to retire like that. So you can see him going back to JGR, or even you can see him go to 2311. I know Denny Hamlin's opened the door for Martin Truex and the races he wants to run. So, I mean, 2311's on the table. But just back to the tough stretch he's having, it's almost like this was foreshadowed at the beginning of the year with all the pit road mishaps and things that were out of his control in the first 5 races. You're like, ooh, RCR is there, I mean, Kyle Busch has got the speed, but can RCR do things with him? And now here we are, where some of them aren't even RCR's fault at this point. It's just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it's his luck, he's had the bad luck all year, and it's kind of just amplified. And you could hear it in his voice, his crew chief's voice. I mean, when his crew chief on the radio was like, take it to the garage, I mean, you could just hear everything deflate on the entire track, it seemed like, because all eyes were on Busch at that point. And it's been a rough go. But I do think he gets a win this year. And like we just talked about anniversaries and things and big things that have happened, Busch has that win streak. So when it gets down to it, there's going to be a track that he's good at, and people are going to talk about Busch, 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 Busch. And I think he's going to get it done that weekend. And he's going to break all this bad luck and get his win to keep his win streak alive.
Yeah, I definitely hope he does. It's just been kind of depressing to see it slip away week after week for him, even with the fast cars. But, well, I think I agree with you. I think he'll be able to get that done. We'll have to see as the year goes on. And then another guy, obviously we talked about Martin Truex retiring and leaving JGR at the end of this year, and he's been having a pretty good season so far this year. And something they mentioned on the broadcast I thought was interesting. The last few years, there's always been that talk about is he retiring, and them talking about maybe that's been a big distraction for that crew, and they might be able to just go have fun the rest of the year, compete for a championship. I did have him in my championship 4 to start the year, so I hope that does happen. But it is going to be weird next year seeing Martin Truex retire as well. I feel like once Denny Hamlin and Joey Logano retire and Kyle Busch, that might be kind of the end of that era of NASCAR.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's going to be. I mean, you think about the guys who, I mean, we watched growing up. I remember Carl Edwards retiring was huge. Obviously, Dale Earnhardt Jr. was astronomically huge, but just it seems like every year we're just losing somebody, and that's how sports go, especially in a weird type of sport like NASCAR where there's really only 40 athletes at a time. It's really weird to see. I mean, you kind of have some guys who like Kyle Larson, who's been around for a long time, but he hasn't been around like our dads weren't watching his rookie
Yeah.
season when they were in college or whatever. So I mean, at that point, Larson's your old guy, your veteran, and or Michael McDowell and guys like him. And it is weird to think about that. I mean, at this point, William Byron's almost a veteran in this crew because I mean he's been in here
Yeah.
6, 7 years.
What's crazy, I would say, after those four guys retire, your elder statesmen are probably that Hendrick trio of Byron, Larson, and Elliott, and then throw in Ryan Blaney there, which is just weird to think about. But that's kind of where we're at. And as far as replacements for Truex, the two names I've really seen thrown around all over the place are Chase Briscoe and Eric Jones. Personally, I'm a big Eric Jones guy. I would love to see Eric Jones get that ride back. I think he was pushed out unfairly, to be honest, kind of like Kyle Busch with just these young Toyota talents. I'm not saying Christopher Bell is a bad driver by any means, but I don't know that Eric Jones deserved to lose that seat. So I'd love to see him back in JGR equipment for sure. I know Briscoe right now is the favorite, according to a lot of people, but I really hope they give the shot to Jones. I'd be curious to see, who do you think they put in there?
So obviously, I'm in agreeing that Chase Briscoe is the favorite, but I have seen some logical connections, or maybe illogical connections, to Gragson just with the Bass Pro Shop kind of sponsorship deal.
That
And
makes sense. Yeah, I
Joe
didn't even
Gibbs
think
has
about
been with
that.
Bass Pro for a while. And you think about a guy like Noah Gragson, who when he first got his big break in NASCAR, it was a big deal. I mean, he was the hottest guy in the Xfinity Series, and it was a huge deal for see him in NASCAR. Obviously, he was with Legacy Motor Club in the season where Chevy had quitted them because they had quit on Chevy, so we never really got to see what happened. Then he got fired. Now he's with Stuart Haas. Come to find out, Stuart Haas has nothing to offer for the drivers. So we really, I still at this point, have no idea what Noah Gragson can do behind the wheel of a premier team's car. And I think seeing him in a JGR car would be super fun. But another guy, I mean, if Josh Berry keeps driving the way he's driving, you have to
Yeah.
throw his name in the conversation. I mean, the race he had at Iowa was impressive.
Yeah, he was one of the fastest guys this weekend at Iowa. Came home seventh place, and I would argue he should have finished a lot higher than that. He's probably a top three car for a lot of the second half of this race. Was absolutely flying out there. But back to Gregson, one thing that I would find interesting about him going to JGR, JGR's kind of always had this driver that played the villain role, whether it's Kyle Busch or right now it's Denny Hamlin. What better guy to slot into that kind of just big personality role than Noah Gragson? If you don't bring Kyle Busch back, you kind of let Denny Hamlin go back to his Mr. Consistency role and just bring in Noah Gragson as your big headline personality driver. I think that would be a pretty good fit in that seat if they can get him over there. And as you say, the Bass Pro Shops connection is there, which is something that I had not even thought about at all.
Well, I mean, you say you need somebody to fill the bad boy role. I mean, they have Ty Gibbs, who is not very liked from the media. So if they have Denny Hamlin, Ty Gibbs, and Noah Gragson, I mean, that team is, and then you have the sweet little Christopher Bell, like golden child, like he's the youngest one, he's the spoiled golden child of the family, and you have just these three guys who are in and out of prison or doing whatever, but like they're the ones who make all the money and stuff. That's just funny to me to have three guys who the media's like, you have Christopher Bell over here. Everyone loves, like you can't not like Christopher Bell. So that'd be an interesting dynamic,
Yeah.
but I think it'd be fun, a fun dynamic for the sport.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And then as far as Toyota in general, they looked lost this past weekend, which I think it surprised me a lot at least. Obviously, I picked a Toyota to win the race in Tyler Reddick, and Toyota's been good on short tracks for most of this year, and to see them just absolutely nowhere. The only Toyota that was even remotely good in this race
Was
was
a backup
Christopher
car.
Bell, and he was in a backup
Yeah,
car. So
which is
I don't
nuts.
know what Toyota brought to the track this week, but obviously it was not working.
And real quick, two things about Toyota at Iowa is, I mean, Denny Hamlin just looked slow. I mean, he got lucky with some cautions and stage breaks, but he was driving backwards for most of the race. And then I mean, other than Bubba Wallace running up front for a little bit, or up front, top 10, I mean, Christopher Bell is the only one who really showed up. So it is kind of shocking to see that out of Toyota, especially on short tracks this year. And I think and this is a new track, so maybe Toyota just kind of misjudged what they thought was going to come from the track, and they just missed the mark. And I don't think it'll happen again now that they know what the track is like. But definitely uncharacteristic from Toyota this year. And Ford got their third win this year. One was Austin Cindric, who should have had that win. And I know you say, oh, well, Brian Blaney should have had that win. But realistically, Christopher Bell should have had that win if you go back and count the laps. So, I mean, only 3 wins for Ford this year, and they are stepping it up, but 3, maybe what should have been 2. And obviously, Brad Kay's got the other one, and he deserved his 100%. But not a whole lot of wins for Ford. But maybe this turns it around. Kind of what happened last year with Ryan Blaney. Didn't really win a whole lot. Won a race in July, I think, and then got right to the playoffs in the beginning of the playoffs and just got on the heater and won the races he needed to. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe this is Ford's year again, just not the year they've wanted to so far.
Yeah, Ford's been looking a lot better on the whole as of recently. And then what you're talking about Toyota missing it at this track, I thought it was interesting that when they were talking to Christopher Bell's crew chief, Adam Stevens, he was saying, well, we came here and we thought we were really conservative on the setup, and then our tires just started blowing. So I wonder if that was just a Christopher Bell thing or if that was a Toyota across the board thing, and maybe that's why they were way off, because you saw a lot of those cars. It wasn't that they were necessarily bad in one area of the track in particular. The cars just would not turn. So I don't know if maybe their camber setup was off or what happened, but like you said, I think they'll be able to fix it. And then as far as Ford goes, very encouraging for them, especially for it to not be just Penske and RFK this week. Front row was up and in and out of the top 10 a good bit. Justin Haley was in the top 10 for a while in this race. And then obviously we talked about Josh Berry already. A couple Stewart Haas cars were up there for a while. Chase Briscoe was up there at the start of the race. So Ford looks like they're definitely getting this back together, and I think they'll be able to carry it forward. And let's go ahead and talk about next week. We head to New Hampshire next, yet another one of these very flat, short tracks. And I know we just talked a lot about Ford, but I'm actually going with the only Toyota that did good in this past race, and that is Christopher Bell. I think this team has really deserved a win over the past couple weeks. I think at the end of this race, they were the fastest car on the track at Iowa. Like you said, he should have won at Gateway. I know we got a little bit lucky, or a lot lucky, with the way he won the Coke 600, but I think this team is ready to win a race just on pure pace again, and I think they do that this week in New Hampshire.
Yeah, Bell's certainly a comforting pick, especially after the run he was on at the end of the third stage at Iowa. I mean, he was just flying. He just couldn't get Elliott, Byron, and Blaney up front. But I'm going with William Byron, kind of for the same logic you chose for Bell. Like, it just feels like Bell's due, and I feel the same way about Byron. It just feels like he's been lurking. I mean, he's had a lot of top 3 finishes the past few weeks, finished second at Iowa, and you just know he's not, like, after the season he had last year, another win is coming for this team, and it's just a matter of when. And I think he gets it done in New Hampshire. And didn't he win New Hampshire last year, or am I making that up?
I am not sure. We'll have to. We'll put it in the edit. We'll say who won New Hampshire last year.
I believe he won New Hampshire last year. New Hampshire and Richmond they go. I watch it, I talk about it, and it's gone. Like those 2 races, whatever.
There's maybe a lobster.
Right, but William Byron, I've seen him on local short tracks in person. He's very good at short tracks. I think him and Rudy Fugle get it done this weekend. And I mean, you saw him pit early. That's something Rudy Fugle does a lot, and it always works out for him. That's how he got his win at somewhere earlier this year. He was the first one to pit, and then the Hendrick guys came, then everybody came. But because he pitted, I think 1 or 2 laps earlier, it was just that much and gave him the lead and the win later in the race. So I like the combination of him and Fugle at New Hampshire this weekend.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't knock that either as a prediction, but also I feel like Hendrick in general is just due right now with how fast Kyle Larson is every week, how fast William Byron is, and then a guy who just doesn't get talked about is Chase Elliott, who's now taken the points lead, which I feel like has gone completely under the radar. Chase Elliott now leads the regular season point standings, has, I think, is it 7 top 5s in the last 11 races or something ridiculous like that, where this 9 car is just up front every week, and I'm shocked that neither of us are picking him for this race, to be honest. But the 9 car has been really fast, and even the guy who we normally talk about is like, well, and why is he still in the team? And Alex Bowman has 10 top 10s on the year. Is one of only 4 drivers like that. So even though Bowman isn't necessarily putting up the flashy wins or top 5 numbers, he's still been a very solid driver in this car. And Hendrick overall, it just feels like it's just a matter of time before we see them back in victory lane. So I, as you've gone with a Hendrick driver here for this weekend. Obviously, I'm going Bell, but we'll see if that changes. And then Nashville coming up the week after, and then Chicago. I don't think there's any way that Hendrick goes the next 3 without at least winning one of them. So we'll see what happens.
And just to touch on Elliott real quick, I feel like they brought the same speed to every track. They have brought top 5 good cars every track. What I haven't seen, even at Texas, they were good at Texas, but you didn't see that dominant speed like you see with Larson from week to week, or Hamlin sometimes, or Byron sometimes, or Bell. You just didn't see that mind-blowing dominant speed like, oh, he's 100% winning this thing. Because, I mean, at Texas, he did a great job holding off on those green white checkers and whatnot, but there was still doubt in people's mind, like, maybe he doesn't have the best car. We have yet to see that.
It's like they're bringing an 8 out of 10 car every week.
Right, which is great for points, but especially with this new playoff format, especially if you make the championship 4, you're going to have to bring the car. Not a great car, you're going to have to bring the best car, which I just don't think he's had. I mean, even at Iowa, top 3 finish, now in the long run, he might have had one of the better cars. But then you see Christopher Bell drive through the field in the third stage. So Christopher Bell may have had a better long run car. So he just hasn't had the best car. You talk about Larson at Iowa, probably had the best car. So until I see that from Elliott, it's just hard to put him in the win category. He's in the great category, but in the wins category for this year, it's hard to place him. But I think Nashville's a track where he can bring that car.
Yeah, I definitely would expect to see some speed out of them there, but I think that does it for NASCAR this week, and let's move on over to F1, where there wasn't a race this past weekend, but we head into Spain for the start of a triple header: Spain, Silverstone, and Austria. So great 3-race stretch coming up there. 3 of the most fun tracks on the calendar usually, and Ferrari's bringing an upgrade package this week. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid like I did earlier in the year, and it didn't work for the upgrade week, but it worked the week after, so maybe Ferrari's going to win in Britain. But for this race, I've gone with Leclerc for the win, Verstappen in second, and Carlos Sainz to round off the podium here. I think this track suits this Ferrari really well. A lot of real just downforce corners. I was debating between them and McLaren because some of these corners are real high speed, like the big looper turn. I think it's turn 3 that goes up the hill there, and then the last 2 corners of this track are probably both going to suit McLaren, but I think the rest of this track really suits the Ferrari car very well as well. And then we don't know what those upgrades are going to be like, but I am going to drink the Ferrari Kool-Aid this week, and we'll see what happens.
Oh, trust me, I'm very well aware you're drinking the Ferrari Kool-Aid. Every time Ferrari announces, like, we're going to paint the left lug nut, you're like, oh my gosh, the left lug nut? We're going to win everything now. There's no way we lose absolutely anything.
That left lug nut is worth 25% downforce right there, so don't knock the left lug nut.
But, so, I'm not, that's not who I am, even as a Ferrari guy. Verstappen, I think is going to get the win. Norris, I think they're going to kind of continue what they've been doing and get better and better and better. I think he's going to finish second. And then I do have a Ferrari. I have Sainz in third instead of Leclerc. Like I've said, they keep going back and forth. I do think this happens this weekend because I think Leclerc has some issue, some Ferrari-related issue, something out of his control, or maybe Sergio Perez just gets into him and turns him into a wall. I just foresee something like that happening, and I think Sainz plays it a little safer. So I have Sainz in 3 spot as well as you do, but he's my only Ferrari in the top 3.
Yeah, well, based on the Canadian GP, they're going to put Leclerc on full wets in the dry, and that'll be why Sainz goes past him, but we'll have to see. And then speaking of Ferrari, I do want to give Ferrari AF Corsa a quick shout-out for winning overall at Le Mans for the second year in a row, 24 Hours Le Mans this past weekend, and in just their second year in the hypercar class at Le Mans, the highest class at Le Mans for the first time since the 50s, Ferrari have won it back-to-back. So they're back in a big way over there, and with different cars as well, the 51 winning it in 2023 and the 50 taking it home this year in 2024. So shout out Ferrari for winning at Le Mans. And that is it for the European racing portion of the podcast as we move over into the MLB. And I would love to say that we have a great bat flip of the week, but I think we're gonna be switching it up a bit this week, Keegan.
Right. So our bat flipper celebration of the week, nothing really blew me away, which is disappointing and sad. But other than that, I just thought this would be fun. So instead of the glasses for bat flips, since it's not a bat flip, we're gonna do the Cubs sombrero that my dad got on a trip to Mexico one time for, I don't know, like 6 pesos or something. It says Cubs in the front, and it's got like the logos painted, which is kind of cool. I've never worn this thing in public. I don't know. It's been just hanging on my wall, and I've never ever taken it off until now.
If it can hit, you guys need to start it immediately.
Dude, no kidding. But where was I going? Oh yeah, celebration of the week. Not really a celebration at all. It's a first pitch, and if you're unfamiliar with who threw the first pitch of the Mets game over the weekend, it was none other than Grimace. Grimace has been all over. He was at Iowa, where he was racing the number 23 car, and he threw out the first pitch. He's been everywhere. So, I mean, we got to give it to Grimace in his supersized glove. It wasn't a strike. It was a ball. But who cares? Javier Baez took out on it anyhow.
Oh, for sure. And the Mets are undefeated since that, by the way.
Yeah, so he obviously brought something to the table. And I think it's National Mascot Day today, which I didn't even plan. But so that works out. He's McDonald's mascot. He's not their best mascot. I like the Hamburglar or Tyler Reddick better. But yeah, Grimace got the first pitch, so we're going with that and throw it on the sombrero. Deal with it. Should I wear this the rest of the time?
Sure, why not?
Yeah, I don't know why I'm rocking Cubs gear. We're absolutely trash right now. We're like 30th in every offensive stat in the nation since like April 25th.
Well, the White Sox and Marlins have to still exist, so at least you're not last. But or there's not 32 teams in the MLB. What am I talking about? No, that is last.
Yeah, exactly.
What am I talking about? Forget what I said. Or let's talk about the divisions.
Since April 25th, we've been bad. Yeah, divisions. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's start with the AL East this week because there's some big news out of the AL East. It is announced that Garrett Cole will be coming back on Wednesday and starting for the Yankees for the first time this year. And for a Yankees team that already sits a game and a half up on the Orioles, and an Orioles team who is dealing with more and more injuries in their rotation as Kyle Brash has gone to the 15-day IL, this is really good timing for the Yankees. And for a team that's already had a great rotation this year, I think this is just going to be an even bigger boost for this team.
Yeah, I mean, they're the first team to 50 wins, and just them getting Garrett Cole back is scary for anyone else in the division. Now, if you're Baltimore, you're not super worried because you are going to have some arms come back, and they're going to come back when it really matters. They're going to come back in the latter half of the season and possibly some come back in the postseason, which they will be in no matter what, pretty much at this point. So you're not in panic mode right now for the division, but you are keeping an eye out for it. And realistically, if you just go out there and do your thing against Garrett Cole when he pitches, you can kind of neutralize that threat. Just get rid of Garrett Cole when you play him. And, I mean, obviously he's going to get some wins against the Blue Jays and Rays and Red Sox. But if you do your job to neutralize him, it's really not that huge of a difference because he only pitches, once, twice a week, every 5 days. So I think the Baltimore's still sitting in a good spot, but I do think they're going to have to get some arms back to have a shot at winning the division.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and it's really just going to come down to, like you said, which one of these teams can just make it further down the stretch with the talent they have. Both of these teams obviously are incredibly talented. That's why they sit at the top of this division. That's why they're two of the best teams in the entire AL right now, but we'll have to see what happens with them. The Red Sox still kind of sit in that no man's land at the third spot in this division, and then the Blue Jays and Rays are both a little bit further behind them. All three of those teams out of the wild card right now.
Skip over them.
Yeah. Then the AL Central, the Guardians keep streaking ahead. And how about Stephen Kwan, who is currently hitting .398? Not quite at the plate appearance threshold to be a qualified leader in stats.
Not qualified.
But he's very close. He's probably going to hit that mark in the next few weeks. So I think Stephen Kwan, he might have a chance at 400 if he keeps playing like this. He seems to get just hotter and hotter every week. Yeah,
I mean, he's been fun to watch and incredible to watch. And another guy in the Central on a team who's sitting 5.5 games back, Royce Lewis, has just been lighting it up. I mean, and he's not just hitting single. He's launching the ball out of the ballpark right now. So they're 5.5 back. But, I mean, you've seen it with teams, and one guy gets hot over the summer, and it kind of just catapults the whole team. One, you pick up the talent of your team, and two, you also give your team some wins just from your bat. So those two things combined can launch a team well above 5.5 games to a lead. I mean, I would look out for them over the Royals at this point. The Royals are in second, five games back. But I think this division is going to come down to the Twins and Guardians, and the Royals may have to settle for a wild card spot because, I mean, the Guardians have just been great all year and consistent. But if the Twins can get hot and stay hot for a little bit and just get like a 3-game lead to hold on to, I think they win the division.
Yeah, and these Twins right now are, like you said, just they're super hot at the plate. Even Carlos Correa. Carlos Correa might be back in a big way. He is red hot right now at the plate. The contact numbers are back up as well, and a lot of times we talk about true 3 outcomes type guys like Aaron Judge and guys like that who it's homer, walk, strikeout. Royce Lewis is a 2 true outcomes type of guy where it's either bomb or IL stint with him. So I hope he can stay healthy because he struggled a lot. But when this guy is healthy, he is one of, if not the best power threat as far as pure home run numbers in baseball, which seems ridiculous to say, but look at the numbers. It's true. He has been elite for the Twins. And then over in the AL West, it's really bad. One thing I would like to point out here, the Mariners, who lead the division, obviously, they're in a playoff spot, but the rest of the AL West are 5 of the bottom 6 teams in the American League with only the White Sox below them. That is, for a division that we thought might be one of the best this season, that is pathetic.
Yeah, the Oakland A's have kind of found their form. They've lost 9 in a row. They're falling back into what they were last year. The Rangers were a team that last time we did this were still battling for first. I think they're 2.5, 3.5 games out last week. They're 4-6 their last 10, lost 3 in a row. So even they're 8.5 out of the lead right now. The Astros are 9 games out. So really the Mariners are starting to run away with this division right before the All-Star break, which if you're a team like the Rangers or Astros, it's not what you want to see. And I think there's a few teams we'll name. The Rangers and Astros are definitely one of those 2 teams. There's some we'll get to later that desperately need the All-Star break for a mental reset. And at that point, you would have to see if that helps them or not. But as of right now, the only team I see making the playoffs is the Mariners from this division.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And then over in the National League, the Phillies keep streaking right ahead. I think they're probably going to be the next team to 50 wins. When you look at baseball right now, currently sitting at 47 and 24. This team just has it all. Great lineup, great rotation, super consistent. The Braves are starting to hit a little bit, though. This Braves lineup is kind of figuring it out. Austin Riley's been great the past week, so you never know. If Atlanta can figure it out, they might be able to come back at the Phillies, but right now I think the gap is still too wide for me to say that's really a chance. And then how about the Washington Nationals, who in the last 30 days have the lowest rotation ERA of any team in baseball?
Yeah.
These young starters are really pitching well for Washington right now, and they find themselves tied with the Padres for the 3rd wild card spot right now. And then obviously the Mets are on a 5-game win streak. They're to within a game and a half of a wild card spot. And the Marlins are terrible. But the rest of this division is right now at least within a shout of playoffs right now.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, I'm just going to say it. The National League sucks this year. Our wild card, we're going to have, probably at the end of the year, we're going to have 2 teams in the wild card that are under 500. I mean, right now, Nationals under 500, the Padres under 500, and the St. Louis Cardinals at 500.
They're right at it, yeah.
Those are your 3 wild card teams right now. That is pitiful. In your division winners, obviously you have the Dodgers and Phillies, but then the Brewers are only, well, they're pretty good ways above 500. Yeah, they're pretty good ways above 500, but it's still just, yeah, other than your division winners, I mean, this is a race for the wild card this year. You can forget the division winners. Those are the Phillies, the Brewers, and the Dodgers. Maybe the Braves if you want to say they make a run, but I don't think so. So your Braves are going to be a wild card team for sure. They're going to be up there. Then the rest is just who wants it.
It's an absolute mess. I mean, you look at the AL wild card, and the Red Sox are the first team out of the wild card, and they're 3 games back. Meanwhile, in the NL, from the Cardinals all the way down to the Mets, who are the 3rd worst team in the NL, and the Cardinals hold the 2nd wild card spot right now. There are only 2 games separating all of those teams, which is absolutely absurd. It's going to be an absolute bloodbath down the stretch. No team, I think, is really out of this other than the Rockies and the Marlins, who, I mean, duh. But the rest of these teams, if any of these teams can get hot, they're going to have a real chance to make the postseason, which is weird to say, especially you look at some of these teams like the Cubs had a terrible stretch. The Reds had a terrible stretch. The Nationals were bad to start the year. The Cardinals were awful to start the year. The Giants seem to be in free fall, and yet they're still only half a game out of a wild card spot. The Mets being a game and a half out after the disaster of a season it's been for them. Any team here still has a chance to make the playoffs, and I think that's going to be really interesting, especially as we move toward the trade deadline. Which one of these teams is going to try to make a move, and which one of these teams is going to give up, even though they might only be 2 or 3 games out of a wild card spot, and say, hey, we need to sell if we want a chance in the next year. So I think it's going to be a really intriguing race for sure. And like you said, a lot of these teams really desperately need oh my gosh, TJ Friedel. Anyway, diving catch and center by the Reds, TJ Friedel, who I think has hurt himself, which would be just par for the course this season. But this National League wildcard race is going to be so close. I'm super ready for it, and hopefully it's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, you have the Marlins, who are 12 games out, the Rockies, who are 10 games out. But then you have 13 teams separated. The person who's the furthest out of those 13 teams are the Cubs, and the Mets are tied for a game and a half out of the wild card. After that, you're all just a game or half a game or tied for the third spot of the wild card. It is ridiculous. I mean, the other swing of that is the Braves, who have the biggest, I guess, variable, which is just 4 games up. But, I mean, other than that, 3 days could completely change this entire playoff landscape for this team. 3 days. That is unheard of. And because they all suck, the playing field's pretty even, and it is going to be interesting to watch. But it also hurts to watch. So I'm very confused as a National League fan, and I think confused just sums it up best.
Yeah, it's definitely really it's just a bunch of confusion. It's all a mess. We'll see what happens later in the season. But unless there is anything else you want to talk about with baseball, I think that is it for this week.
Yeah. Oh, I do want to talk about the U.S. Open because I have been getting more into golf. I think one of my New Year's resolutions this year was to get more into golf, and I actually have. U.S. Open was nuts. I don't know if you watched it.
I watched
Rory
the end of
McIlroy. Yeah, he had a putt within 4 feet. It was 3.4 feet or something. It was within 4 feet to go -6 to finish the whole thing -6, which would have tied him for DeChambeau at the time. DeChambeau was a hole behind. He misses the putt and has to 2-putt it. He gets the second putt. Now he's -5. So DeChambeau has to do the last hole, the 18th hole, in 5 shots. Well, his first shot, he completely shanks into the rough. Right. So you're like wow.
Me.
Yeah. So and he's on a tree root pretty much. So he has to go from a tree root to the hole in the rough in 4 strokes. Well, he hits it out of the tree root, and you're like, oh, that looks good, and it lands in a sand trap. And you're like, wow, this can't get any worse. We're about to have a super exciting finish, maybe an overtime finish or whatever, whatever, right?
Playoff.
Then he proceeds to hit the best bunker shot I've seen in a long time. I don't watch a whole lot of golf.
I was going to say, this is many years of golf watching experience.
This is up there, man. I mean, 18th hole, U.S. Open, all the pressure's on you, and you just go, boop, and right next to the hole. So obviously, he puts it in. And
the putt wasn't a gimme either. You saw Rory miss that almost exact same thing earlier, just from the opposite side of the hole. So Rory obviously is going to be kicking himself for a guy who's normally so automatic on the short putts. To miss 2 in the same round, I was very shocked by that. But credit to Bryson DeChambeau to be able to just rebound from that terrible tee shot and keep going. And this is a guy who a couple years ago was really one of the more disliked pros in golf and kind of started the
my favorite.
LIV movement.
He's my favorite.
Yeah, and now, well, he's a lot of people's favorite right now. He's really become beloved by a lot of the fans. I think he really knows what he's doing as far as fan interactions and marketing himself, just being a genuinely nice guy towards a lot of these fans. So it was a very popular Open win, I think, and credit to Bryson DeChambeau to be able to rebound after that terrible tee shot. For a guy who led most of the weekend, you would have hated to see him lose it on something like that, but obviously he was able to pull through, which is pretty great to see.
Yeah, and I mean, I subscribe to him on YouTube. He does a bunch of cool stuff on YouTube. Like he'll buy the cheapest golf set on Amazon and play a pro with it, or he'll use little kitty.
I can buy the
things.
Cheapest golf set on Amazon. I can do that.
Yeah, but you can't shoot like 7 under with it like he will. You know, we'll shoot like 700 over maybe.
I can shoot 7 under on a putt course. Does that count?
I don't think you could. Honestly, I don't think you could shoot 7 under.
On a putt course, I definitely could.
We need to explore this. We need to explore this and maybe get some video.
GTD putt content coming later this fall.
Yeah. We should because I mean we are planning on doing some go-kart stuff, like some K1 speed stuff. So we still
Yeah.
got to settle that debate. So maybe some fun little challenges, some competitive things, get the competitive juices flowing, and I can roll
Yes.
over you and everything. Except for I suck at putting.
I was about to say, I'm going to demolish you in putt-putt.
That maybe. But when we get on the go-kart track, ooh, it's gonna be fun. I'm excited for that. And even some iRacing stuff maybe. And when NASCAR comes out, because I know you're working on your sim racing rig right now, and I am as well. So those will be fun when we get those going.
Yeah, I cannot wait until the new NASCAR game comes out next year, actually made by iRacing. I'm currently still on NASCAR Heat 5, which is just, it's a game. Like,
Yeah.
there's not much to say about it. So, really looking forward to the next NASCAR game. Got College Football 25 coming out here.
I was about to say, let's not forget.
Super excited for that as well. Just counting down the days until that. I'm barely making it by on MLB Road to the Show right now.
So if y'all want some content on that, because we're in weird spots, especially going to Auburn, but you're obviously decked out in Florida stuff, and we see the Florida stuff everywhere. But I mean, y'all see it on my desk in the bigger studio, and I wear Alabama shirts. I'm an Alabama fan as well, so we can do like an Alabama-Florida head-to-head game and give y'all some content on NCAA or whatever y'all want to see. Just let us know. But yeah, I'm excited for that. A lot of fun stuff to look forward to.
Yeah, and with that, I think that is it for this week. So we'll be looking forward to New Hampshire this weekend, another good week of terrible baseball in the National League, and we will see you guys again next week.
Yep. Adios.